the USDA, or the US Department of Agriculture, and a team of nutrition experts had to answer a really big question. The question being, what is healthy eating? And how can they do it in a very simple way? So in order to answer that question, I think you can break it down into two parts. First part being, what kinds of foods are we supposed to have in order to have a healthy diet? And the second question being, how much of these foods should you have so you're not having too much or not having too little? So with the different foods, there are different foods that I eat and that you eat. With these foods, you can break it down into 5 food groups. First of the 5 food groups, fruits. Second one being vegetables. Third being grains, dairy, and the fifth and final one being protein. So now that they had the different food groups, they know what kind of foods you can have together to have all of the different nutrients, all the things like the calcium in the dairy, the different vitamins and minerals that you get in the fruits and vegetables that you can get. What they did then was they created something called the MyPlate. So the MyPlate breaks it down so that you have half your plate as fruits and vegetables, or a quarter of your plate being fruits, a quarter of your plate being vegetables, a quarter of your plate being grains, and a quarter of your plate being protein, with a cup on the side sort of symbolizing dairy foods. So now we have the different food groups. We have a very basic form of portion sizes or sort of how much we should have of the different food groups. With the MyPlate comes 5 key messages too. So the 5 key messages, first one being to have half your plate as fruits and vegetables. And as you sort of see with the plate, that's already done when you're having a quarter as fruits or vegetables. The second one of making at least half of your grains whole grains. The third being to switch from regular milk to fat-free or low-fat 1% milk. Low fat, preferably being 1% milk. The fourth one being to drink water instead of sugary drinks. So what are some examples of sugary drinks? Sugary drinks could be soda, it could be juice, it could be that fruit punch, or sweetened iced tea, or sweet tea. The last one being to avoid oversized or supersized portions. So where are you going to get your supersized portions or oversized portions? You're going to get sort of the oversized portions from eating out sometimes, maybe when you're going to a buffet or if you're at a party. So trying to avoid those portion sizes. And I think the MyPlate does a really good job of hitting home all these key messages. So with the fruits and vegetables, you want to, well, at least I want to, have things that are convenient, something that is cheap, and something that is abundant in variety. So when I think about abundant in variety, I think about colors. So you want to choose things that have a variety of colors very similar to the rainbow. So what kind of colors you're thinking about? Your reds, your oranges, your greens, your deep purples, your blues, any of these kinds of things. If you have a variety of it, you're going to get different kinds of vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. When you're choosing this colorful variety, you want to choose seasonal. And if you're going to choose cheap, you want to choose things that have either seasonal, so seasonal fresh, things that are frozen, or things that are canned. The thing with grains is that the key message was to have half your grains as whole grains. So what does that mean? Whole grains can be sort of thought as things that, examples of grains could be pasta, rice, tortillas, or bread. But if you're choosing whole grains, I think it's important to think about what is a whole grain. So a whole grain is broken down into different parts. The endosperm, the germ, and the bran. So the germ being this bottom part, the bran being this part, and the endosperm being this part. So when you're having refined grains, the bran and the germ are removed. Those things contain a lot of B vitamins, and it contains fiber. When you're removing all those things, if you have in whole grains, would be very good, very nutritional. So you want to choose things that say 100% whole wheat. Or if you're choosing rice, things like brown. Or things that say whole grains. So that's the thing about grains. With protein, you can think about it as two different kinds of protein. So there are plant-based proteins, and there are animal-based proteins. Now in these last two food groups, the proteins and dairy, you want to make sure that you're choosing things that are lean, things that don't have a lot of the kind of fat that we want to have less of, which are saturated fats. What are saturated fats? Fats that are solid at room temperature, so your butters, your creams, your ice creams. These kind of things come from anything that's sort of animal-based. I mean, you might have some vegetable-based like coconut, but for the most part, things that come from animals have saturated fats, so you want to limit those. But what are some examples of plant-based? Some examples of plant-based might be beans. They may be lentils, peas, nuts, seeds, soy. Animal-based proteins, you can have seafood. So those might be fish. And then you want to have poultry. Those things are like chicken or turkey, eggs, and dairy foods. So these seafood, poultry, eggs, and dairy, we're choosing these because these are actually more of the leaner kinds. You could also choose red meat, but we try to limit those, and we try to limit processed meats. With dairy, we want to choose dairy because even though it's sort of controversial, and some people may say you need it, some people may say you don't need it, dairy has a lot of good things in it. It has vitamin D, it has calcium, and it has protein. But there are different kinds of dairy. There's whole milk, there's 2%, there's 1%, and there's non-fat, or skim. So there's a myth out there. A lot of people think, well, if I choose non-fat or 1%, I'm going to get less nutrition. Well, in fact, the only difference between whole milk and 2%, 1%, and skim are the percentage of saturated fat. How much percent does whole milk have? It has about 3-something%. So you want to choose non-fat or skim or 1%. And those are essentially the different kinds of food groups, the key messages, and the different types. Thank you.